With disappointing earnings over the last week from Microsoft and Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, the future of Apple also being debated after the release of its first quarter results. Revenue fell for the first time in 13 years, and sales of iPhone fell year on year for the first time ever. So where is this all going? To look back on the tech week, we're joined by Arthur Goldstuck from Worldwide Works. Great to have you with us.
Good evening, Francis.
Very quickly, let's start with this craziness in Johannesburg today about the mall, because you've been looking at something different, which is online selling, but it seems like we're still attached to going to the mall. Do you agree?
There's no question, and the opening of the Mall of Africa today just underlined that. What our latest online retail in South Africa report shows is that this year, for the first time, online retail in South Africa will reach 1% of total retail. But that contrasts with the United States, where this year, for the first time, it will reach 10% of online retail. So you get a very clear picture this year of the vast gulf between the two countries and between South Africa and most Western markets.
Why are we behind the curve so much?
Well, one of the reasons is exactly what we were seeing today, the massive mall culture we have in this country. So we probably have per capita more malls than anywhere else in the world. And the result of that is that most people do their shopping in malls and they're comfortable in malls. So that means that anyone selling online has to persuade people to move out of that comfort zone and into this new discomfort zone of online shopping. And so far, last year, at any rate, there were around 3.2 million people shopping online. We've done research with Ask Africa that does a massive consumer survey, which showed that is the total number of people shopping online, compared to the expectation that this vast amount of people coming online through smartphones would be shopping online, and they're not. The smartphone is not yet a shopping tool. So it's the old, experienced internet users that are moving into shopping online. The rest of them are still far more comfortable in a mall or in a shop, and the online retailers have to convert their readiness to shop online into actual shopping behavior, which the malls are doing very well.
Well, I wish online would take off because for the sake of our traffic, basically, in Johannesburg. All right, let's move to this incredible week of global results. Apple first. We've seen the rise of Apple. Are we now seeing the decline of Apple, or is this just a little blip, these very disappointing results?
Well, the two very big stories are the Apple and the Facebook results. And what's significant about Apple is that it's the first revenue decline they've had in 13 years. And when you look at the scale of the decline, it's the biggest that they've had, far bigger than what they had 13 years ago. In fact, the graph is fascinating in one way, but it's scary for Apple investors and for Apple itself, because it finally proves what people have been saying for the past year, that they pretty much run out of ideas. The iPhone 6 and 6 Plus were the last really big ideas, and why they were big ideas is because for the first time they made big screen phones. Now this year they announced a small screen phone, the same power of the iPhone 6 or 6S, but built into the size of an iPhone 5. But it looks like an iPhone 5. And it's a 4-inch screen compared to everyone moving to bigger screens now. And I think that is a big mistake. They misread the market in terms of thinking that people who currently have 4-inch iPhones, there's about 20 million of them, would want to upgrade to new 4-inch phones. No, they want to upgrade to bigger phones.
And the watch also seems like a bit of a dud. Do you agree?
On the one hand, it's been a big success in that overnight it became the biggest smartwatch in the world, but at the same time it didn't come anywhere close to the projections and the expectations. Apple hasn't reinvented the watch, which is what they were trying to tell the world they had done. They might have created the most popular smartwatch, but they certainly haven't created the most popular watch. And the watch as we knew it is still around and will still be around. What we find really exploding is activity monitors like the Fitbit, and that is still the leading, if you want to combine smartwatches and activity bands into wearables, that's still the most popular wearable on the market. And the fact that Apple couldn't beat a one product company like that tells you that it's a far more difficult market than they think.
Okay, let's move to the others, but just quickly, finally on Apple, could it gain the momentum again? Because there's services, this new space, iCloud, music, the virtual reality, the car. Could something be happening? Could Apple surprise us? Or do you think it's really running out of ideas?
No, I think Apple has a fantastic ecosystem, and we shouldn't expect it to start dying out because of not having new products right now. For example, they're definitely working on virtual reality products because they're hiring people to work on virtual reality. They're definitely working on vehicle products because they're building out that division quite strongly. They have a in-car system that is going to be one of the major systems along with the Android system for connecting smartphones to cars. So an iCar in the future is not going to be a big shock if it does come out. An Apple virtual reality headset that is totally different to what everyone else is doing is one of the things we can expect. But those are not areas where they're going to regain the kind of momentum that they had from the iPad and the iPhone, which were massive successes. The iPad is now declining, so everyone's expecting Apple to come up with a new form factor. In the notebook market, they came up with the most admired and most copied format in the world with the MacBook Air, still probably the most desired notebook on the market, but not a big enough category to rescue the iPhone's decline. So they really have to come up with a new category or a category winner that propels them ahead of the market. And there's no sign of that in the immediate future.
Something really innovative. Okay, so Apple declining just for now, but Facebook still has that magic. To be honest, I've thought for years that people are so fickle. Eventually, one day, everyone will just be turned off, sick of it. But Facebook just keeps going and going. How?
Well, I think I sat in this studio about 2 years ago when scientists in America came up with the idea that Facebook was like a virus which would eventually die off, and they gave it till 2016 before it would actually die. If not completely, certainly it would be in very ill health. And what we're seeing is a very robust animal that is growing all the time. So I think people underestimate the power of the network effect of more and more people coming onto Facebook, finding their connections, and then bringing other connections on board. So Facebook and WhatsApp between them are the two biggest drivers of smartphone take-up in South Africa at the moment. There's a massive smartphone migration happening from basic phones. And then across Africa, that's going to happen as well. So in this part of the world, that growth is not going to slow down. But the real brilliance of Facebook is being able to translate that into revenue. We've seen this huge revenue growth, and we've seen this massive profit growth, trebling profit. And most of that coming from mobile. The figure is 82% of their revenue is now from mobile, and 80% of their users are on mobile only. So Facebook has really got the mobile revolution down pat, even while others are trying to wrestle with getting their smartphones to be bought by the public. Facebook is selling an intangible product on those smartphones, and they're not dependent on the fickle smartphone market.
And it's all about how you advertise. Apparently now they will look at more advertising on WhatsApp. I don't know if it's there. I don't see adverts on WhatsApp, on Instagram. Those are the next frontiers, but you have to do it without annoying people. Is Facebook finding the right way of doing this?
Well, we can expect them to find the right way. What they'll start doing is selling business services. So a business can have a channel on WhatsApp which acts as advertising but doesn't look like advertising. It looks like content. So people are happy to consume content if it doesn't look like advertising. If
it tells them something interesting, I suppose.
Exactly, and if it's useful, interesting, and entertaining. Those are the three keys to content. So don't sell it as advertising, sell it as content or as a service.
Is there still a threat out there? I know Germany, I think, was concerned about privacy, about the way Facebook uses information to tailor ads. Could there not still be a backlash?
That is definitely the Achilles heel of this whole social media explosion. So WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, all of those are collecting massive amounts of information about us. And you are seeing the beginnings of a backlash in Europe with the European Union, for example, starting to look very closely at these issues and starting to wrap these companies over the knuckles, fining them as well, and forcing Google into this environment called allowing people to be forgotten. So in other words, any link to previous content that implicates a person in crime, for example, if they've served their time and the like, they can be forced to remove those links. And that is just the beginning. In the future, we'll probably see a lot more privacy requirements imposed on the likes of Google and Facebook. Facebook hasn't yet seen that backlash because they haven't become the content platform yet that Google is. But that's where they're going. So we can certainly expect that to happen.
Where do you think it should go? I'm interested because you've also looked at kids online, privacy issues. Things can follow you for your whole life. I don't think young people understand that. So will the privacy laws evolve, or will we learn to be more careful? Where should it go?
Well, in the book that I wrote with Nikki Bush, Tech Savvy Parenting, we dealt a lot with exactly that issue of how children have to curate their online lives and their social media lives, and parents have to guide them in that curation to make sure that in the future employers won't find embarrassing material or information or links. And that in particular is an area where I think we'll find the European Union taking a lead in protecting children, allowing them to expunge their record, so to speak, to be forgotten in terms of things that might offend employers in the future. So I think we'll see a lot more action in that area and a lot more awareness, but it's only just beginning.
Okay, so we've looked at Apple, Facebook. Let's move to Twitter, which is really fighting to get users. What do you take out of what Twitter released this week?
I felt very sorry for Twitter when they said that their user base had grown by 5 million. That's very sad compared to the kind of numbers that Facebook is reporting. But in South Africa, it's still growing. So that tells you that there are certain areas and certain contexts in which Twitter is still a vital platform. But Twitter itself hasn't actually realized that. They're not focusing on those countries or on the reasons why it's popular in those countries and trying to reiterate or reintroduce that kind of momentum and that kind of vitality into the areas, particularly North America, where they are flagging.
What do you think? Because I've heard that South Africa, one of the most, one of the best markets for Twitter. What makes us unique and keen on Twitter?
We're a country where people didn't have a voice for a long time, so having that voice is very important. And this week of Freedom Day, in fact, highlighted just how important it is for every South African to have a voice. Twitter is one of the great platforms for giving them that voice. You don't have that kind of awareness and that strong sensibility of needing a voice in Western countries, in particular the United States. But the other side of the equation is that the Twitter management, I believe, has kind of missed the boat. They're so focused on how important they are that they've lost sight of how important their users are, and they're not looking after the users as much as they're trying to protect their own egos.
Finally, let's just look at Google briefly. Any trends, anything to take out of Google's results?
Google disappointing the market is a rare event, but what we also have to see is that Google is a complex animal as well. It's got many legs to it, many areas in which it can achieve growth. And one of its very powerful areas is the Android platform, which is used on most smartphones in the world. So one shouldn't be fooled by quarterly declines or weaknesses, because the long-term strength is still very much there. The foundation, the platform on which the business is built is massively powerful. Again, it comes back to that privacy issue of the amount of data they're collecting on us. That's going to, again, be an area where they're probably going to have a backlash. But in the meantime, between Google and Facebook, they're not dominating the advertising world. And in fact, they're a major threat between them to traditional news media. So I think we are going to also see a standoff between traditional media and Facebook and Google. But what we certainly are not expecting is for their share of overall advertising revenue to start falling in the near future.
All right, this has been fascinating, a tech roundup by Arthur Goldstuck. I think in future we should maybe focus on privacy and the future and where it's all going. Thank you so much for your time. Arthur Goldstuck from Worldwide Works. Let's take a quick look